Hi, everyone. I'm immigration lawyer John Khosravi here with episode 181 of the Immigration Lawyers Podcast. I want to thank everyone for joining. We have a great guest today with some cutting edge, or the newest information possible on visa processing that you have to listen to. So I recommend sticking through this one till the end because the information is vital for your clients. Before I start, I want to thank everyone who's been downloading the Immigration Lawyers Toolbox magazine. It's been a hit officially. My sponsors are telling me they're getting customers. People are reading the articles, reaching out to the attorneys and all this kind of stuff. So it's been wonderful. You can catch it at immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com/magazine. It's a free magazine. Just check it out there. I want to thank our sponsors, in particular, DocuWise has been so kind to always support the podcast and the magazine. DocuWise just started a new system where you get to send emails to the client through Gmail and Outlook, and it integrates with their systems. Wonderful, all the technology that they're using. If you wanted to get an extra 10% off their annual plan, just go to www.docuwise.com/immigration-lawyers-podcast and use the code Immigration Lawyers Podcast to get that. Having said that, if you wanted to learn about verified immigration lawyers, the Immigration Lawyer Directory, and wanted to sponsor the magazine or write an article, just email me at info@Immigration Lawyers Toolbox, and we'll talk and see what we can do. So with that, Mahsa, thank you so much for coming on the show. Mahsa Khanbabai, a colleague in the Northeast. She's been really active with DOS and has some information she wants to share. Thank you for coming on, Mahsa.
Yeah, sure, John. It's always great to be here. Thanks for all the work that you do and getting information out to everyone. So recently there's been a number of communications put out by the visa services offices within the Consular Affairs Unit at the State Department, press releases and different meetings that we've had as AILA. And unfortunately, the situation is pretty dire at the State Department, not only in terms of funding issues and resources, and staffing, but COVID, all of these kind of have impacted what's happening at the State Department. So we see this both at the National Visa Center and at the embassy and consular post level. So frankly, what's happened is that, COVID has impacted how staff is moved around between the embassies. As most of you know, foreign service officers are appointed to different offices, spend a stint there of anywhere from 2 to 5 years, and then move to another post. These transfers happen every year. They're on a rotating basis, and so COVID has definitely impacted that. Also due to COVID precautions and safety measures, staff is not in the office as they used to be. And so you have a reduction in consular services. And then that impacts all of the cases that are kind of at the National Visa Center waiting to be sent out. So when you understand the constraints related to COVID and staffing, then you start looking at the numbers of application and how that's being impacted and what the State Department has decided to do. So the first thing is they've said that they are going to prioritize immigrant visa applications and try to get those all scheduled since the immigrant visa ban has been lifted and the Muslim and Africa travel bans have been lifted. And so the cases that are at the post already, those, for example, that had an interview scheduled sometime before COVID and then COVID hit and all of those interviews had to be canceled, those cases are going to be given priority and start to be rescheduled. And then you have all of the cases that have been in the pipeline at the National Visa Center for immigrant visa applications, family-based and employment-based, that are all then going to have to get into queue to be scheduled in an interview. Just to give you an idea of some of the numbers in the past, so for example, in January 2020, roughly 75,000 immigrant visas were at the National Visa Center waiting to be sent to a post for an interview. Currently, that number, as well as of February, is 473,000 immigrant visa applications. So that's 6 to 7 times greater a number of applications that are waiting to get out to embassies. In terms of capacity at the embassies, again, that's limited because of the reasons I mentioned. But what you do need to know is that 90% of the 136 embassies around the world are processing some level of immigrant visa applications. So there's 10% that are not doing any IVs. And then you have the other 90% that are processing some level, definitely not normal levels. In terms of non-immigrant visa applications, they're the ones that are going to suffer the most because of the priority being given to immigrant visa applications. So in the past, for example, NIVs accounted for 90% of the volume and workload of an embassy. And that's roughly 9.5 million non-immigrant visa applications that used to be processed. Those are now being given lesser priority and will not be interviewed as regularly because of the priority given to immigrant visa applications. But also the thing to keep in mind is that out of the 233 consular posts that handle NIV applications, only 43 are processing routine non-immigrant visa applications. So that means that 190 consular posts are processing only emergency non-immigrant visa applications. So the numbers are obviously staggering and really problematic. And I think it behooves us as attorneys to know what is happening and then to pass on this information to our clients so that they can be better prepared and have more realistic expectations about what's going to be happening with their cases, whether or not they want to travel and leave the United States or not, for example, for an NIV appointment, depending on what country they're from, what type of visa they have, and even for those people that are waiting in line to have an immigrant visa interview, if their case is still at the National Visa Center, there's a very, very high chance that they're not going to be scheduled for an interview anytime in the next 6 months, frankly, and maybe even longer than that, depending on where they are in the queue of cases waiting to be scheduled.
Yeah, that's awful news. We've been seeing it. And the question pops up, like you mentioned, some people want to get H-1B visa stamping. There's already somewhat of a ban. Maybe there'll be an exemption, but if you leave, you never know when you get at that appointment. Tourist visas are probably just not happening with that being the lowest priority of everything. I'm getting calls for people who want tourist visas. I'm like, well, give it a shot. And who knows if they're scheduled. The nightmare adds on is how they deal with K-1 fiance visas, this hybrid non-immigrant immigrant visa. I'm doing a couple of K-1 cases right now that did lawsuits, or they felt like one of them, the couple that's engaged had a baby, which becomes a U.S. citizen, immediately became part of the exemption. And the way the embassies, each one deals with K-1 fiance visas, it's so inconsistent. We have one embassy that asked for a G325A for the petitioner beneficiary, form that hasn't been used in 2 years at least for fiance visa cases. And it's just a mess. The procedures are all wrong, and just adds to it. Who knows how they're going to handle it? I had a consultation with someone from a South Asian embassy, let's say, and the embassy gave them administrative processing because they said the K-1 visa is subject to the immigrant visa ban. And when it came out, I had to deal with a lot of embassies to fix that. This person just came 6 months later, and their life got delayed for no reason for 6 months. It's a nightmare, but it seems like these things are pending. Had they told us about anything about K-1 visas, how are they going to treat those as priority or not? Their website, DOS, I think they said they're going to give us priority, but they say one thing, but in practicality, something different happens. But also, which embassies are not processing at all? I imagine Abu Dhabi, Armenia, Turkey, the embassies we deal with are cut back drastically with processing. But any information on which ones are not processing?
Yeah, so in terms of the K-1, your first question, those are going to be given priority. The Bureau of Visa Services did say that they would be included as immigrant visa applications and given priority. In terms of the embassies and what their processing capacity is, I mean, as you mentioned, for example, Turkey has decided that they are only going to accept and process and have interviews for individuals that are either Turkish citizens or they have resident status in Turkey. So, for example, all of those Iranians or Afghanis or others who might have been going to Turkey for their interviews, those have all been canceled now, and it doesn't look like they're willing to budge and make an exception, even if someone's been sitting there waiting for weeks now to have their interview. Yerevan is also very limited and has indicated that they will not accept any transfer requests. So if, for example, you have a client that used to be in Ankara and now you want to try to move it to Yerevan, they're saying, no, we can't. They've had a lot of problems for over a year now because of the conflict that happened with Azerbaijan. And so it's been very difficult for that embassy as well. I guess the one thing,
communication with them, they say they're not even processing visas too, even though I got a lawsuit in for K-1 that's forcing them. So even if you're already with Armenia, it doesn't mean you're going to get scheduled. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Was that client of yours Armenian or from somewhere
from
else.
Iran. They joined the Milligan lawsuit, and really quickly they got an interview. So federal lawsuits may be the way to go. I think there are lawsuits against the embassy in Turkey for making this arbitrary distinction of Iranian versus a resident of Turkey, non-resident. Several colleagues said they sued. We're going to see what happens with these. The problem with these lawsuits is sometimes you win most of the time, it seems, but it only applies to the plaintiff. So
Right.
your clients have to buckle down and pay $4,000, $5,000 just to get what should happen normally for them.
Yeah, I mean, again, they've really just kind of imploded from within, particularly with what happened with the Trump administration and how they've kind of just broken it down. So all you can really do as an attorney is, one, advocate for your client, right? Do your job. Just because the situation is horrible doesn't mean that you shouldn't try. The number one piece of advice that I always have for attorneys is keep your arguments concise, direct, explaining what is it that you want and why you believe your client should be able to get it. If you rattle on for 3 pages, the officer doesn't have time to review that. Keep it short and sweet. And then in terms of, the other thing that you can do, like you said, is file a lawsuit. It really does go a long way to making a difference. And the third thing is to reach out to your elected officials, like your senators and your representatives, and tell them that the State Department funding is critical, that they need more resources so that they can do their job. I mean, most of the consular officers that I've interacted with in the years when I've gone to embassies for tours and interviews and things like that, not interviews, conferences, they're really good people that want to do their job. They just don't have the resources and time to be able to do their job properly. And so then everything suffers as a result.
Yeah, just diplomacy in general, and not just consular processing portion of it. For the last 20 years even, it's been in the process of just degrading, where more of the budget goes to Department of Defense and to intelligence agencies, and just destroying the diplomatic corps, which is a shell of itself at this point. And just to rebuild it is going to take years. So it might take the whole initial term of a Biden administration just to get to pre-Trump levels even. And that's not much. So it's long delays, and it's going to affect the economy in the United States. So many businesses already, this inconsistency, how they're issuing the NIE, the exemptions to the travel ban from Europe. People have businesses they can't come to. None of it makes any sense. It's a disaster. And Biden administration extended it to a large extent and added a country to it. So they're kind of continuing that aspect of it as well. So it's all bad. It's all bad news, unfortunately, but it's better to know the bad news and to have expectations. There's nothing worse than a client who thinks that they're going to get the embassy appointment. 6 months go by, they haven't. They're going to get mad at you, the attorney. That's why you got to set the tone at the very beginning. These are the delays. I just lost the fiance visa case because I said, it could take at least a year is nothing. It's going to take 2 years for an Iranian fiance case, unless you file a lawsuit and really push it. But that's that. They're like, you know what, we're not going to wait 2 years. So I said, okay, it's probably going to go maybe another attorney that says, oh, it's 3 months, and just give them that story, or they're just going to break apart. It's hard to have a relationship be torn apart for 2 years. That's too different.
The other thing that I do want to add in regarding the travel bans, so while the immigrant visa ban was rescinded and the Muslim and Africa travel bans have been rescinded, like you said, the COVID travel bans are still there and the NIV ban is there. The important thing to keep in mind for the COVID bans is that it can still affect your immigrant visa application. So essentially, remember, if the State Department has very limited resources, they are going to prioritize and schedule interviews for cases that are ready to be issued visas. Mm-hmm. So they will not schedule someone for an IV interview if they are subject to the COVID ban, because then you can't, they're not going to give the visa, even if you say, hey, I'm going to go to a third country that is not subject to the COVID ban and sit there for 2 weeks so that I become exempt from the COVID ban. So sadly, I think we're going to see that a lot of the European countries are going to see a significant slowdown in IV processing because most of those countries are subject to the COVID ban.
Exactly. All the preference categories on hold if they're not exempt. And I'm getting calls from clients who, a lot of Iranians say, well, now the travel ban's gone, contact the embassy, let them know, contact Abu Dhabi. I'm like, there's still other bans. I'm not going to waste time issuing because you're not exempt. And that's very frustrating because they just hear Biden came, the ban's gone, but there's multiple bans. It's not just one. There's like 3 hitting a country like Iran. Maybe one of them was lifted. There's COVID ban. There's that. And keep in mind, administrative processing is still there. So the old school ban, the way they used to do it, which is like, we'll let you know when it will let you know, that still affects cases. And it's gotten broader. I see this happening in Pakistan, India, China. It's not just our typical Iranian cases or Middle Eastern cases. this all over the board, this extended administrative processing, even European cases sometimes I'll hear. In Russia, that's a disaster. You wouldn't even get interviewed even before COVID. So it's just a bad situation to deal with if you're doing consular processing. So try to adjust, try to change the status. Don't leave the borders if you're inside. That's bad guidance for the most part right now. Hopefully next year things will get better.
Yeah. If you want, I can give you a few other updates on some other consular issues if you have time for that. So the other thing to keep in mind is some embassies offer what's called a Dropbox service for non-immigrant visa categories. Certain non-immigrant visas do not require an interview if you are applying for an extension. So if you had a visa, for example, an H-1 visa, and you're from India, and your visa expired 18 months ago, and now you'd like to travel to go to India, and you need a new visa to re-enter, there is a 24-month period wherein if your visa is expired during the last 24 months, you can apply for a visa, but you don't need to go into the embassy for an interview because you already had a visa and it's expired within the last 2 years. So that's a new expansion from 12 months to 24 months. And that's set to expire this March 31st, but I have a feeling that the State Department will try to extend it.
That was a great move that they did. And India for H-1B in particular, that Dropbox is a godsend. That's going to help a lot of people.
Yeah, and so, other embassies offer it as well, like London, etc., but not every visa category applies. So be, really careful, check at the embassy's website that you're wanting to process in to find out what are their criteria.
So it just popped in my head as this issue, and I wanted to research it, but, with these travel bans for Europe, if you have an adjustment case pending and you get advanced parole, someone was saying the travel bans some of them may not have an exception for people with advanced parole. Is that correct? Or are you familiar with that?
Yeah, correct. So if you have advanced parole and you go to the Schengen region, then you are then subject to the Schengen COVID ban and would have to go like to Mexico or Croatia for 2 weeks before you're allowed to re-enter the US.
Wow. So, a lot of my kids are family where they're married to U.S. citizens, so they're with an exemption. But if you're all these preference categories, don't let your clients go, or else they'll get a little vacations in Mexico or wherever before they come back to the United States, and additional couple $1,000s in costs. Yes. It's never easy. People call me every day. I have one quick question. I have an easy question. I'm like, there's like 50 things we need to narrow down variables to make sure we're giving good advice. It doesn't work that with immigration.
If I had a penny for every quick question, I'd be a billionaire.
Thank you, Mahsa, so much. If people want to reach out and talk with you, or any social media links or anything that you could share with us?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I have a Twitter feed and a Facebook and Instagram page. I don't remember them off the top of my head. I'm so sorry. Maybe I can get them.
Mahsa Khanbabai, and just put it in Google. It'll pop up. I misspelled your name in Google and it automatically auto-corrected, so they know you well in Google.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Mahsa. Thanks so much, and have a great trip. You have a quick trip coming up. I wish you the best. Stay on the line. We'll talk a little bit, but thank you everyone for joining. Check out the magazine, immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com/magazine for the Toolbox magazine. I'll say it many times so you all know where to go. But with that, God bless. Be safe, everyone.
Bye-bye.